Hello and welcome to this mini lesson where I'm going to be talking about a poem called Eat Me by Patience Agbabi, which is from the Poems of the Decade collection that we study in the first term of the English literature course. So in this session we will read the poem and complete some initial analysis of the poem. I'm then going to introduce feminist theory to you and get you to make some notes on this. And then finally, you're going to be analysing the poem using a feminist lens. So this kind of activity where we use a critical theorist or lens in order to analyse a text is something that we do all the way across the A-level course. And I think it's what really differentiates studying A-level literature to studying GCSE literature. So let's start by reading the poem. So this poem is called Eat Me by Patience Agbabi. When I hit 30, he bought me a cake, 3 layers of icing, homemade, a candle for each stone in weight. The icing was white, but the letters were pink. They said, eat me. And I ate, did what I was told, didn't even taste it. Then he asked me to get up and walk round the bed so he could watch my broad belly wobble, hips judder like a juggernaut. The bigger the better, he'd say. I like big girls, soft girls, girls I can burrow inside with multiple chins, masses of cellulite. I was his jacuzzi. But he was my cook. My only pleasure was the rush of fast food. His pleasure to watch me swell like forbidden fruit. His breadfruit. His desert island after shipwreck. Or a beached whale on a king-sized bed craving a wave. I was a tidal wave of flesh. Too fat to leave. Too fat to buy a pint of full-fat milk, too fat to use fat as an emotional shield, too fat to be called chubby, cuddly, big-built. The day I hit 39, I allowed him to stroke my globe of a cheek. His flesh, my flesh flowed. He said, open wide, poured olive oil down my throat. Soon you'll be 40, he whispered. And how could I not roll over on top? I rolled and he drowned in my flesh. I drowned his dying sentence out. I left him there for 6 hours that felt like a week, his mouth slightly open, his eyes bulging with greed. There was nothing else left in the house to eat. Okay, now we've read through the poem, what I'd like you to do is to do an initial analysis of the poem. So think about the way that you were told to approach poetry in your GCSE classes, and I've given you some guiding questions to help you here. What I'd like you to do is to start to pick apart this poem. So think about, what is the title about? What is the meaning of the poem? What is this poem saying about society, relationships, food? And I'd like you to pause this presentation video now so you can get on with a little bit of this analysis, and when you've finished, feel free to press play again. Hello again. I am certain you've come up with some really lovely ideas about this poem so far. So maybe you've looked at the Alice in Wonderland connection with the title. Maybe you've looked at the kind of power dynamic between the speaker and the partner in the poem. What I've got for you here is the poetry analysis crib sheet that we use. So it's got lots of terms that are organised into the form, meaning, structure, rhythm aspects of the way that we analyse poetry. And this is included as well in your FlyingStart pack. So you might want to kind of pause the video or have a look at the pack now and just look through some of these pieces of terminology and see if you can bulk out your analysis of Eat Me even further. So now you've done your initial analysis of the poem, I'd like to introduce to you feminist critical theory. So I'm sure you would be aware of sort of feminism as a movement, or maybe even engage with some feminist critical theory before at GCSE level. So I'm hoping just to take this to the next level for you, hopefully. So feminist literary theory, if we look at feminism as a movement to start with, feminism argues women suffer prejudice and discrimination simply because of their gender. Women need to be free from the injustices of patriarchy, which is male dominance, and particularly in the sphere of the family poem and work. So if we look at what feminist literary critics are looking for, feminist literature and critics are looking for emphasis on the world from the point of view of women who are seen as disadvantaged, with their interests ignored or themselves being devalued in society or objectified within society. That is certainly true of the poem that we've read today. I've also got some key terms here for you. So we've got patriarchy, power, socialism and feminism. And these are key terms that we would, when we talk about feminist literature or we approach an analysis from a feminist perspective, we would regularly use these terms such as patriarchy, power and socialism. So please do look at the definitions here. And likewise, we've got questions that we ask about a text as a feminist critic would. So first off, how are women being portrayed in the text? What kind of power do they have, if any? Is the form and content of the work influenced by the writer's gender? So if we have a female writer, can we see that there is a message about her gender within the text? Similarly, if we have a male writer, can we make any connections with their gender and the text? Further, what behavioural expectations are imposed upon the characters within the text, and has that anything to do with gender? So how do the gender expectations of particular characters influence their actions as they move forward as part of their character arc, and ultimately how does it shape them as individuals? So what I'd like you to have a little look at now is returning back to the poem, and I want you just to focus on the poem from a feminist perspective. So I want you just to look for instances where you're looking at female either empowerment or disempowerment, and also that kind of key power relationship between the speaker, the feedee, and the male in the text, the feeder relationship as well. Okay, so just pause the video now and restart when you have done. Okay, hopefully you've got some really lovely ideas and you've enjoyed having a look at the poem using this perspective and using some of that language introduced on the last slide. What I have for you here is just a few ideas, so 8 ideas that you might have already picked out in the poem. If not, please do continue to annotate your poem. So one point that you might have picked out is in the second stanza we have the icing, which is white and pink, which are typically associated with femininity, and also kind of childhood, like young children here, and that links in really nicely with the did what I was told, that unjommed line there. We get the sense that she's oppressed by the male in her life here. Similarly, we have the anaphora of girls, like big girls, soft girls, girls, and just like the kind of controlling behaviour that we saw in a couple of stanzas above, and the use of pink and white, we can see that the male is infantizing the woman. So not only is she disempowered because she is female, she's sort of further disempowered because she is likened to a female child by the male in her life. We've got the use of, in the centre of the poem, lots of lovely metaphors and similes. So the use of metaphor, I was his jacuzzi. So the sense that she one is objectified as an object. So she's a jacuzzi, and that's an object of kind of pleasure and relaxation, and serves a purpose for him. We also have the idea that it was his jacuzzi, his breadfruit, so we've got that possessive determiner showing that his possession over her is an object. And some of the more exotic imagery as well, breadfruit, desert island, these kind of metaphors in the centre of the poem, in that the choice of the lexical set, so picking words that are more kind of about exotic words. It exoticizes the female body and kind of further mystifies our ideas of the female body as something kind of unknown, and it demonstrates as well the speaker of the poem, her disconnect from her body. We see a power shift happening towards the end of the poem, so this is where we get our Volta. I allowed him to stroke the globe of my cheek. So here we've got the I here being dominant in the poem, so that's looking more at kind of the word order and structure there. And we also have this rhetorical question towards the end: how could I not roll over on top? And here we clearly have this kind of play on words as well, don't we? That the we have the kind of sexual image there of the rolling over on top, but also the power play of being on top, being the dominant character and having power over the male character in the poem. So subverting some of these ideas that we began looking at as a feminist critic at the beginning of the poem. So hopefully there's something new here for you in your analysis, and you found this session interesting. Underneath the link to this video on the FlyingStart is another video which is an analysis of the female body within this poem, and that's definitely worth a look at if you were interested in this particular subject. Do keep all of these notes as well and bring them to your first classes in English literature at Exeter College, because this is a poem that you will study on the course. It is a poem that you could potentially be writing about in your exam, and it is a poem that we're going to go through and look at together as well. So thank you very much for engaging with this session. I hope you've enjoyed it, and I look forward to meeting many of you in September.